Chapter 0. What has come before.
"We have an issue, sir," Thorane stated in a manner most important. He looked up from his book that he was engrossed in. "What is it?" Thorane explained the story. Earlier that day, Thorane had been keeping an eye on the boys. They were hiking in the hills of the Wasatch Mountains. The sun blazed in the sky as the temperature approached 95 degrees. Thorane wiped his forehead. "Why is it always outside? Can't you play video games like normal kids?" Thorane grumbled in the heat. It was not to say that Thorane did not like hiking. However, even he had to admit it had been hard to keep up with them this summer. Every day off to more remote locations, always pushing themselves to go up higher faces, they never seemed satisfied with the accomplishments they'd finished. Always on to new and better things. He wondered how the two boys could not be tired. Even as a powerful vampire, he had a hard time keeping up some days. Thorane almost wished for school to resume. Not that it would be much better. The boys would stare out the windows all day, and the minute the last bell rang, they would be on their way back into the mountains. However, at least it won't be as deep in the mountains. Watching the two climb was amazing to Thorane. Their skill grew by the moment, and both boys were becoming very proficient mountaineers. Thorane had thought it was a phase at first. Now, though, he started to realize he would most likely spend much more time on the side of mountains. Thorane sat against a rock and tried to relax, waiting for them to get over the face that they were working on. He stretched out and tried to get the kinks out of his back. "I wish I would have brought a book," he thought to himself. In the first few months of their climbing, Thorane had been on edge any time they were on the side of a cliff face. He worried about the boys. But over time, even that had worn off. He could now watch the boys dangle off a huge face without much trouble at all. Thorane smiled as he heard one of the boys shoot off a comment to the other. The two were funny to listen to. They were always harassing each other in order to push each other to the next level. They argued as much as they spoke in normal terms. Now that they were getting older, their comebacks had started to make Thorane laugh once in a while. Sometimes they would say something, and if Thorane was shadowing too close, he would worry that they heard him chuckle. However, they never noticed his presence. Thorane was satisfied that he was doing his job properly, yet there was a part of him who wanted desperately to reveal himself to the two boys. He had a much deeper connection than even he had ever thought he could with the two. Most times he understood that his role was at the sidelines, but he had spent so much time watching over them. Sometimes he felt as if he were the third in the group. "Eindach," Thorane said to himself for the 1000th time. Thorane watched the two hike the face. They were almost to the top when he caught something out of the corner of his eye. He ran down into the shadows. His fears were validated when he got a bit closer. There were two of them, and they were most definitely vampires. They were after the boys, that much was clear. The boys laughed and joked and spurred each other up the face that they were hanging off. The two vampires looked on, and soon Thorane was within earshot of their conversation. "Is it him?" one vampire asked unsurely. "Yes, it's him," the other affirmed. "We should have told the master about this," the vampire said. "No, we will be rewarded if we bring the boy in. We can handle this. He's a human boy, for Christ's sakes," the one said. "I don't know," one questioned. "Come on, what kind of vampire are you?" he asked with a snarl. "I don't know, there's something about that kid," the other observed. "Fuck! Come on, man, he's a kid," the other said. "Fine," he said, trying to bolster his confidence. The whole situation seemed somehow off. He started to look around randomly. He felt something, or someone. They started to creep out of their hiding place, intent on capturing the boy. One of them heard a rustle. "Did you hear?" He didn't finish. Thorane was already on them. Thorane leaped out of the shadows and landed on both of them. Fear washed into both their faces when they realized they were outmatched completely. "I don't suppose I need to ask who sent you two?" Thorane asked as he had them both pinned down. "Who are you? You don't know who you're fucking with," one vampire spit out. "Yes, actually, I do know who I'm fucking with," Thorane said. He trained his gaze up, to the mountain, to the boys. They had noticed nothing, and were still scrambling up the side of the face. Thorane shifted himself so he held one vampire down with his knee on his neck. He reached over and snapped the neck of the other. Although not dead, he was incapacitated. "Why are you here?" Thorane asked calmly to the second. "The master sent us. He's looking for the boy," the vampire said. Fear soaked into his voice as he stared at his companion, gurgling. "Why?" Thorane asked. "I don't know," the vampire said. Thorane pushed down harder on his neck with his knee. "Are you sure?" Thorane asked and smiled. "I don't know," he croaked out through his crushed windpipe. "Fine," Thorane replied, and snapped the other's neck as well. He may have had more information, but Thorane had already known what was going on the moment he had seen them. Thorane grabbed the limp vampires and started dragging them out of the mountains. He stopped at a ridge. He surveyed to make sure that there was no more unwanted guests following the boys. He saw nothing. He grumbled again as he dragged the two out of the mountain. Every day they have to go farther and farther. He dragged the two bodies to the trailhead where the van waited. He loaded them in and he drove into the day. He ended the two vampires as quickly and humanely as possible. The bodies were being disposed of. He drove to the boss's house to give his report on what had happened. He spoke quickly. Thorane finished the story and his boss's eyes were wide with fear. He looked out the window for a moment. In all his years, he had hoped he would never have to make this choice. He stared out the window for a long time. Finally, he turned back to Thorane. "He sent them for sure?" he asked. "Yes, it certainly appears that way," Thorane replied. He rubbed his temple. "Well, that does not bode well," Thorane's boss said.